Hey, good people. Impact Podcast Day. How are you? How are you? You are in for a treat today. We are having an amazing conversation, which of course we had already started, but we're going to bring you in. We're going to bring you in. So welcome, everyone. You know us. You know us. Our names are up here. You know us. We're going to jump right in. And we are going to bring our guest on, who is Miss Kristen, Curly Girl's mentor. I'm going to have, I'll preface it first. I always preface it and kind of bring you guys up to speed. So I don't know if you guys missed the last podcast. It was absolutely juicy. We had great conversation about skin. And I do feel like this is a trend right now because we talk about mental health. We talk about our cups being full and all that stuff. And so I don't know how far we can progress without taking a step back sometimes and reflecting and kind of digging deep and asking ourselves questions and tapping into what's really going on. And sometimes what's going on is deep rooted into something else, right? So I feel like now that we have been talking about our relationship with a number of different things. So last podcast episode, we spoke about our relationship with skin. And today we are going to talk about our relationship with hair. So, so excited to have Chrissy on. I call her Kristen. But if you would like to introduce yourself, tell us who is Kristen, and then we're going to jump right in.
Hello. I am Kristen, the Curly Girls mentor. I have actually been in this industry for 28 years. And over the years, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is that we as a people don't love our hair. Right. And so it allowed me to really tap into a space that was really unbothered. And it drove me to really become the Curly Girls mentor because I just really wanted to get to the bottom of why we did not appreciate what actually grows from our scalp. I have been a stylist that has done everything under the sun, right? But when I realized the lack of love that we had for our own hair is when I actually decided to dive all the way into our curls, right? And when I say curls, I mean the curls that you have, right? Like we have coined it as the natural hair community. And so often I see my clients suggesting that they don't have curly hair, but we all have curly hair. We all have curly hair. And so it has created a space for me to really create relationships and build bonds with my clients so that they begin to trust the stylist, right? Because that's really what it boils down to, trusting the stylist.
Yeah, I would definitely be one of those people who say I don't have no curly hair. I'll be one of those people saying my hair thick like a Brillo pad. You can't comb this hair. I would not think I would be your client because when I think of curly hair, I look at your hair and I say that's who her client is. I'm not her client. So yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, listen, Chrissy knows, right? So let me transparent moment because I don't talk about this, but I was with my hairstylist forever. Tyree, my universal stylist, my love, rest in peace. I was with him forever. And I coined like my bob was my thing. And when I say that thing was that it was straight, bone straight, and I always got a relaxer. And one time he just kept scratching in the crown of my head and was like, all right, let's keep an eye out because it's thinning. And I was like, this was every bit of like 15 years ago. 15 years ago. So at some point, this style that I used to love, I noticed that it just was not how it used to be. And so my hair was getting thinner. And I was like, I got to stop whatever, because I got it processed in so many different ways, a whole lot. And I was like, I got to stop. And so I had never been to anyone else, but I made the shift. And that's when I went to Chrissy. And I know the timeline because I was pregnant with Egypt. So we're talking 9 years ago. And I remember at first I got 2-strand twists when I started going. And I still remember when she coiled my hair. And I I would never have believed that my hair could do that. And then when she was talking about like water, I was like, no, because water, right? We don't want water on our hair. This is the belief, because water is going to puff my hair. It's raining. Water is going to puff my hair up. So what do you mean I need to hydrate it? I was like, nope, not a believer, until I had to become a believer. And now I am gaining a different relationship with my hair because, to be honest, I had to. So, we talk about it all the time. I'm like, had I not been forced to, oh my gosh, you probably still would see the bob today. Okay, so, but I know Damaris asked an amazing question. We were talking about it, and I was excited to delve into that because it definitely, I think it will bring up some things that we have misconceptions about. So many of us come in with these beliefs about our hair. And so I'm gonna
so I'm thinking, and it's interesting, Kristen said, you have to have a relationship with your stylist, right? I'm 50 years old, and it took me a very long time to even find a stylist or even a place of belonging, right? So I'm from Brooklyn, and all the Africans around me, and then they all knew me, so I would go in there, whatever, or the Dominican shops, right? Which, by the way, one was for me like a forbidden place, right? Because I'm not to them, I wasn't African enough, right? My hair wasn't coil, I didn't have curls enough, for them to do. So when I would walk into a shop, it was looking at me like, what is she doing here? Like, really? Like, these braids are not, box braids are not for you, miss, stop it, and things like that. And then I would go to the Dominicans, and so much heat that would damage my hair, right? Because again, my texture and my hairstyle was not great. I would go to like a more Caucasian shop to try to fix it, and my hair is too thick for them, right? So there was like no place of belonging. So, as a Hispanic that, was brought up with family that had, I guess, good hair, that was what it was deemed as, right? Like good hair. Even when I was in high school, I would go through so much stuff because they're like, oh, your hair is so pretty. Or, I was just telling Aaliyah, I dated a Jamaican guy for the very first time. He was such a sweet guy, so absolutely gorgeous. And he decided to take me home to mama and to his mom. And his mom looked at me, and the first thing she did was touch my hair and say, at least you'll have pretty babies, and walked away from me. So that turned me off entirely. I think I broke up with him that very night, right? So it's just like this misconception of, you're Puerto Rican, you have these pretty hair, blah, 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 blah. But we too feel like we don't have a self of belonging. For you, it's pretty. For us, it's murder, right? Because we don't have anywhere to kind of like, we don't have that relationship, right? We don't have that. Where am I going to go? Do I go to the Dominicans and get it burned up? You know what I mean? Do I go here and feel not welcomed? I have two Afro-Latina granddaughters, and their hairs are very, very, very coarse. And I tell my daughters, you better make sure that you figure out, I don't care, and you ask questions. Make sure that my grandbabies don't look crazy, So if you're box braiding, you make sure that you're doing that correctly, right? Because I don't want you to damage their hair. And this is something out of, not out of your reach, but you have to make sure you're making my babies look good, right? So it's just like a lot coming in, especially when culture, when there's mixed races, right? And there's that cultural and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like that's such an elephant in the room, right? And my daughter, my granddaughter, she has beautiful curly hair. So, obviously I'm going to visit your shop. And my daughter's always braiding it. And I'm like, why don't you let her hair breathe? Why are you not doing that? So I love the puff. And I'm like, well, if she got a puff, she got a puff. You know what I mean? Embrace that beautiness. Like, so it's just a lot, where, especially when you have, like, again, like those mixed cultures, where do we go? Where do we go where we feel belong? And also that a place of belonging, and where can we go to? I don't know. I don't know. It's just, it's something I just was rambling about prior for us starting. So I just felt like I needed to mention it.
No, I think it, I don't think it's rambling at all, right? I don't think enough people talk about what needs to be talked about. And one of the things that you mentioned that I want to applaud you on is ask questions, right? Like, it is your hair. If you don't ask questions, you will not know. And if you do not know, you're leaving it up to whoever is doing your hair to do whatever they want to do. Right? And so unfortunately there are a lot of spaces where we have gotten away as stylists from the consultation, excuse me, which is so important, right? And so one of the biggest things that I emphasize to my clients is whether here is home or not, right? I'm going to make you aware of the things that are going to be important for your hair. And please ask questions. And the person that does not answer your questions or makes you feel uncomfortable for asking your questions is the person that you should be uncomfortable with. Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you are, I do understand the idea of sitting where it looks familiar, and you should, right? You should. But if they make you uncomfortable from the start, it's going to be an uncomfortable scenario from start to finish. From start to finish.
So speaking of like I would love to talk about, right, the pattern, the hair pattern and the curl and the good hair, the bad hair, right? For me, I feel like all I know is like 4C, because that's the whole thing. Like, what's your 4C? Is this for 4C? I don't even really know what I think that means. It's a tight curl, kinky, right? I feel like that's the terminology I'm typically used to hearing. Like, oh no, because your hair is kinky. Don't say it's nappy. It's kinky. So what's the whole curl pattern thing? And should we even be paying attention to that?
That's going to be a hard no. A hard no, right? And it's a hard no because everyone okay. I'm going to treat you guys like I treat my clients, right? Now that you know this number and this letter, what do? What's next?
Just tell.
I mean, it's nothing happens, right? Like, there's no prize that you get. There's no reward for having this specific letter or number. It really only puts us in a space to be even more confused about our hair, right? It puts us in a box that most of us feel like we probably don't really fit in anyway. And it still doesn't create the know for us to really know what to do with our hair, right? Like, when it comes to knowing your hair, you just want to know the basics. Is it curly or is it straight? Do you want to wear it curly or do you want to wear it straight? Do you keep it clean? Because that's a big thing, right? When you think about curl and number and letter and things like that, what really matters is your texture, not your curl. And so when we get involved in the letter and the number, and we think we have this 4C or this AB or the 1, 2, however they claim it, right? Like, what happens when you don't have that same texture in the back? What happens when you're a different curl pattern in the middle? What happens when you are dehydrated and you are that letter and that number? What happens when you're straight normally, right? Because that's how you choose to wear your hair. But when you wash your hair, you're back to that letter and that number.
So for the beginners, because I've never heard of, honestly, I've never heard of letters and numbers. Can you explain that?
So I'm going to explain it as best as I can because I don't subscribe to it, right? But there is literally this chart that was made up of different strands of hair to display where you fall on this chart, right? So the looser curls are, they're like A's, right? And then you get to like the tighter curls, they're like B's. And then like the kinkiest curls are like C's. And then in those letters along that chart is where you should be able to find your letter and number.
Got it.
Now it makes sense, because when you said you may have a different texture in the middle and the side, and then when it's wet, because I don't know, but well, from my sisters who got like a kinkier, when that thing get wet, you be like, oh, this is nice. And then it dry up and you be like, okay. Okay. So now that makes sense because you mentioned like moisturizing it, right? Like the water thing. And I tell you, I never would have understand that until I saw it. And so I saw it at the shop and I'm like, oh, that's real. Chrissy says something, and this is going to bring up like for us who have daughters and may have experienced this because I think I may have a trauma in this area. I do not like doing my daughter's hair, meaning I'm talking brings me anxiety type because they are extremely tender-headed, as was I. And I was talking about Egypt, the 8-year-old who has so much hair, a lot of hair, long hair, extremely tender-headed. And so we were talking about shampooing. And maybe this is a myth because for us, or from what I understood, we don't wash our hair like that whole every day, every week. No, every 2 weeks, every couple weeks when we wash our. So she was like, oh, no. It should be every couple days, did you say? And I was like, who? I was like, wash our hair. Who? Can you tell us why that would be and why in my mind, her hair is really tough to manage. This is the story that I understand. Her hair is tough to manage. So the less I shampoo it, right, the easier it is. And you were like, no. Can you tell us why?
So it's way more complicated when you let anything sit. When you give anything a lifespan, it becomes complicated. And that's exactly what is happening with our hair, right? The whole idea was like the dirtier, the better, right? Like if you leave it longer, then you won't have to worry about it, right? And honestly, that's just gross. I just think that's gross, right? But I mean, I subscribed to it at one point, right? At some point, I just found myself not shampooing as often as I do in present day. But there was always this thing for me in specific that was just like, but it doesn't feel good, right? Like you leave it for a while and then it just doesn't feel good. The easiest way for me to explain it is every day we secrete oil from our scalp every day, right? And so the longer you leave that oil to sit on your scalp, the more it's clogging your pores, the more it's slowing the growth, right? And then it just creates buildup. When it comes to tangles in the hair, right? Like our hair is going to tangle. That's one thing for sure we can count on. It's going to tangle. But if you catch the tangle before it gets too tangled, it's way easier. But if you leave it for 2 and 3 and 4 weeks, right? Or we do these protective styles that really aren't protective at all, you are allowing your hair to become as tangled as possible. And so it does become more complicated because it's so tangled at that point. Whereas if you're doing it at the very least on a weekly regimen, how tangled did it really get in a week? Right? Like maybe you kept it in that one style for that whole week. So it didn't really get too tangled.
Okay. I was like, no. Okay, got you. We were talking. I don't want to keep talking. Did someone have something? No. We were talking. I was thinking about like back in the day with hair and like if my mom could be on, we could definitely talk about because my mom didn't really know how to style hair, and so all I wanted her to do was like straighten it and give it as much heat. Like I wanted all the stuff that just kept it as straight as possible. But it's so interesting because I don't subscribe to any of that for my girls. And I'm really thinking now it's more so about what we see. And so because interestingly, my hair is natural, my mom's is natural, her sisters, they all have locks and stuff. Now my girls are really wanting to have their natural hair. And I'm thinking back to, and so I don't know what this shift is, if it really is just a matter of understanding more. Is it that we find it more beautiful, like associated with identity? But I was really surprised for my 11-year-old to say that she want locks. And I was just wondering, is it less right? Of course the story is changing. I would think, because for me, when I think back, and we were talking about it yesterday, the Chris Rock movie, Good Hair, Bad Hair, Good Hair, Good Hair. I actually went and looked it up. So I'll share what I saw, and it actually says the hair care industry, the revenue in the hair care industry is $13.4 billion, and it's expected to grow by 1.17%. And so I think about, I thought back to that movie too, because we were talking about it, and his whole purpose of making that movie was because his daughter said, how come I don't have good hair? And so it just really made me think about this whole hair relationship thing. And so I wanted to ask you ladies, if you thought back to your 10 to 15-year-old self, what would you say your relationship was with your hair?
So I will jump in and say that that our hair journey is a real thing, and so I can remember though, as a teenager, so I started doing hair. So, and I have a daughter that's 28. So hair was my thing. I was a shampoo girl. I actually owned the natural hair salon. Y'all don't even know that. Like yeah, I did. So it was a whole thing, because somewhere around 18, so between about 13 and 18, I had damaged my scalp because I was like the finger wave queen. And so I had damaged my scalp from all of the alcohol and the bleach. And I remember my mom wouldn't allow me to dye my hair. So you guys remember the spray cans that would come out during Halloween?
The blue
So
top,
I would,
top.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So I would get the finger waves that would sit up high, and I would spray blue and green and
We did it with Kool-Aid, Obiama.
yeah, yeah,
Bringing
yeah.
that back to the days. Kool-Aid.
Right. And so, but I was damaging my scalp, and I remember, doing all of the natural remedies, like wash my hair with mayonnaise, right? Y'all know about that, the mayonnaise and the lemon, and making up your own concoctions and doing a thing just to try to figure out how to manage my hair. So I absolutely was, tender headed as well. So I didn't necessarily like the press and curl, because when my hair got wet, it would draw up. So my curl pattern was very tight. So I went to cosmetology school. So I learned about curl patterns in cosmetology school. Y'all don't even know that too. And so, and so I learned that my curl pattern was really tight, which is why it was hard to manage, and blow out and different things like that. But it was not, I did not have good experiences with my hair, because it was just really, really hard to manage. And then, of course, a lot of people ask me, do I have alopecia or do I have cancer or something like that? My scalp got so damaged because of the alcohol and the products that I would go to the dermatologist, and they said, well, you got subareated scalp. You have um, um, oh my goodness. Basically, I had four different things going on with my scalp. So when I let my hair grow now, my scalp, if I itch it, it bleeds. So I cannot let my hair grow. So they said you can't have heat, you can't have braids, you can't have a wig, you can't have nothing. And I have to wash my scalp every day, right? Every day. So because of that, it's like, but my boys, I had boys who had beautiful hair, and they want their hair to grow. They want their hair to be long. And I'm like, no, this is a lot, because their curl pattern was very tight, but it was soft. So it wasn't, mine felt like a Brillo pad, but my boys' hair was very soft, but it was tight. So yeah. I got all kind of hair stories. My daughter hair was very curly and soft, so her hair was never straight. It would take a lot to get her hair straight.
Yeah, I definitely remember the mayonnaise and all that. It was the conditioner and all that stuff. Like, totally remember.
For me, it was Vitapoint. Like my mom, first of all, when you talk about traumatic experiences, my hair was that hair. It was so coarse. Now that I'm older, it thinned out, right? So throughout the years, I have more thinner hair, and it's because of the blowouts, being underneath the heat, which is, whatever. But I used to have this thick, 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 thick hair that my mom would just like literally beat me with a brush with because I moved too much. So I was that child. But one thing I tell you is that um, I had insecurities because of my hair. So I never wore my hair down. And to this day, very seldom you see me with my hair down. And when people do see me with my hair down, they're like, wow, you have some,
So beautiful.
guess what? I put it right back up.
Why?
It's something that was instilled in me when I was younger because I was really insecure about my hair. I was in a very, very, uh, back in high school, we were really mixed, right? So I always hung out with the black girls. I was always like, not really in the Hispanic, sector because back then it was very segregated, right? The Hispanics with Hispanic, the Asians with the Asians, black. Me, no, I was always a rule breaker. I was like, no, we're gonna hang and you're gonna love me. So in order for me to fit in, if that makes sense, I always made sure, and that was something I always made sure that I kind of like hid that, right? Not to make anyone feel bad because I've heard so many stories and so many other like a lot of my friends, their traumas, right? They would say things like, you get all the attention because you have hair. I'm like, but you get the attention because you're beautiful, right? I might have the hair, but you got them hips, girl. So it's like things like that, and that always like I don't know. I always keep my hair up all the time. I mean, when you see me with my hair down, it's only for a quick minute. Yeah.
So
Wow.
the hair trauma is real. We
Yeah.
also know that to be hair shaming,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
A lot of hair shaming as a child because you wasn't considered if you didn't have long flowy hair or and I never was that girl that had the long flowy hair, so I wasn't a part. Like to your point you said, Damaris, like it was a hair thing. And so if you didn't look like this, if your hair wasn't like that, you wasn't in the group or in the crowd. So I went through all of that as well.
Oh, listen, I wanted to be at the end girl. So I went got these box braids that took 70,000 years. Um, spent all this money. I can't even remember back then. It was once. I never did it again. I came home and had the biggest migraine because it was so tight and I wasn't used to it, right? And I cried trying to take them out. And I never did it again, right? I mean, they were beautiful. And the girl, I remember, wait, she was so mad because she really spent a long time on those braids, and I took them out so fast. I was like, cut them off if you can't. So again, those are things like trying to fit in, right? Um, I almost killed myself with a huge migraine. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And that length thing is so real. I remember Sayla saying to me one time, her friends maybe mentioned something like your mom's hair is short, right? And her feelings, she felt like they were talking about me. But I was like, Mom, well, I call her mom. I cut my hair. Like I like it short. This is like the longest it's been in I don't know, 7 years. So she couldn't understand that people choose to have short hair. And I'm like, it's these stories about hair though. And so there's a comparison too between her and Egypt's length of hair all the time. So I come home yesterday and she's like, oh my God, right? She got to pull it, right? Because she's like, oh my gosh, mommy, you got hang time. You got hang. That's the thing, right? It's really long, right? Oh my, it's really long. But I'm like, it's okay how it is. Does it? It's okay, but it's that idea of long hair, as if that's like better. It's something with the hair. I don't know.
I have a
I don't
question for
know.
Kristen, if that's okay. So there's this thing or myth or whatever that after you turn 50, you shouldn't have long hair. Is that true? Is that something you recommend as a sign? Because listen, I'm like, oh my gosh.
So I told you I'm gonna treat you guys like I treat my clients. It's personal preference, right? It is more becoming, right? Specifically because of gravity and the the changes that our face goes through. And so it is just a more complementary style to go shorter as you age. Doesn't necessarily mean that you should be short, right? I feel like a lot of people misconstrue that. It's just like, I don't really want to be short though, right? But you don't really have to be short, just shorter than what you were. And the longer your hair gets, especially if you're wearing it down, it does just make everything appear to be drab. I just want to touch on something really quick. You mentioned the whole idea of hair and then cutting it and choosing to have short hair. Admittedly, so I was one of those girls, like, right, with all my length. And I found out I was having a daughter, and I cut my hair off. And I chose to cut my hair off at that point because I did not want hair to be a thing for her, right? Like, I was that person that was looking at the floor when I was getting a trim, right? Like, how much hair did you really cut? Let me see. Let me see. Right. And I didn't want, I do come from women who grew really long, really thick hair. And by default, I just felt like that equal beauty. Right. And as I got older and I was in the industry, I understood that that was absolutely so far from the truth. And I didn't want to raise up this young Black little girl, right, feeling like she had to have long hair. And so I cut my hair off, and I did. I had long hair down my back. And honestly, I have not been back to that since then. She's 13 now. She's 13 now.
And just out of curiosity, is her hair long now?
Nope.
No.
So she has a haircut. Everything from here down is nothing. And then she has this really curly top up top. Really curly. And this is at 13. This haircut that she has now is probably her 5th or 6th major haircut. Mm-hmm. She doesn't ever want just a trim. She normally wants like an undercut, a mohawk. We had one side shaved at one point. She is very radical in her hairstyles, and I love it. I love it.
My girls. I don't think, because I'm the boring mom. I'm like, put it in a ponytail, keep it pushing. Like, maybe because I'm the boring, I was brought up boring. But yeah, I think that is so cool. To have a mom that allows you to express yourself, with your hair and your hairstyle. We weren't brought up that way. Like, if we did our hair too much, my mom would be like, go back in, like, get your hair.
Same for me.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
And it made me think about it. It made me think about, first of all, I want to ask them. I wonder our younger girls. First, I was thinking about, we need to have our girls on a podcast. That's another one. We need to have them. I kind of want to hear from them. But what's their hair stories? Because I could imagine that theirs isn't as deep and traumatic as ours was. And I say that because, like Chrissy was saying, with her daughter, and like Sayla, she might walk in here. Well, she has it braided right now. You never know what she's going to do with hers either. They seem to be so open and just creative and just do what they want to do. They're not as confined as we are. They are so open-minded and they have fun with their stuff. So there's no way at that age I would have shaved anything. Like, I would shave it. Like, I remember when you said looking at the floor, I understand now that whole trim thing, right? We always, when you would see girls with long hair, but it's like you can see through the ends and stuff, and there's all these different lengths. And when they would say you need a trim, no, I'm just thinking like just at the end. So when they cut it too short, it's like, oh my God, you cut all my hair off, not understanding it wasn't healthy. And I don't think we ever went for healthy. I just want it long by any means necessary. I don't care. The longest part, keep it at the longest part. And it's like jagged, but it was something about length. Something about length. But this makes me want to go ask them, kind of have a conversation about hair.
This actually was one of the biggest things for me that allowed me to create deeper than the root, because I just knew after servicing so many women who had curly hair, just watching them cry in my chair, I just knew it literally had to be deeper than the root, right? I knew it had to be something deeper than them not wanting to wear their hair or them not liking their hair. I knew it had to be something um, beyond all of that. I knew it had to be something outside of just the hair, right? And so that allowed me to really be able to tap into, well, what did life look like at home when you were getting your hair done, right? Like, was it traumatic? Were you getting your head beat with a brush, right? Like, was it like, I'm not burning you, that's just the heat, right? Like, what really did that look like at home? Right? And for most of us, like you were saying, Aaliyah, for most of us it was traumatic in that way. It was very traumatic, and
Oh
so
my God. I'm getting
it makes sense.
flashbacks.
Mhm. And so in present day it makes sense as to why um women just, they don't have a happy space when it comes to their hair, right? And so one of my biggest things with my clients is, I want you to love your hair today, right? I don't want you to love it when you get to where you want to be. I want you to love it today. So help me help you be able to create a space for you to love it today. So, that I'm huge on making sure that we appreciate what we have and what we can do with what we have, so that we don't relive those traumatic spaces that we're used to.
I'm gonna
So,
have.
Kristen,
Oh,
oh,
I,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Obiama. Just real quick, I'm gonna have such a crazy conversation with my husband when he gets home today, because my husband is the person here that would be like, "You're not cutting their hair." Like, for them, for him's daddy's little girl's hair is supposed to be long. And I'm wondering if that's traumatic. Now thinking as we're talking about this, if this is something that he was brought up with, like girls, supposed to have long hair and my daughters need to have long hair. Because I have a daughter, Kristen, that would absolutely do shaving her head and mohawks because that's her personality. And now I'm thinking, wow, we're really not allowing her to be who she is. Or not we. Well, yeah, I'm gonna take part of that, right? Because I listened to my husband, but not after tonight, Kristen. Ooh, he's gonna be mad I was in this podcast because I am really gonna have a really strong conversation. What are we doing here? What are we telling them? Go ahead, Obiam, I'm sorry.
No, that I want to not lose my point, but I want to speak to what you're saying because as a parent, how we are conditioning our daughters around the hair impacts how they see themselves as a little girl, but then how they see themselves as an adult. And so if they are feeling a little boxed in, right, and prohibited, then once they get of age, they're going to wild out on their hair just because they couldn't. And I know for me, there were so many things that I wasn't allowed to do with my hair. So at 18, I was like, have at it. I'm doing all the things, right? And so my daughter, who is 28 now, at I want to say, so I braided her hair all the way up until probably about 14 and 15. And that's when her kind of hair journey began. And she really started getting into her own hair. And I allowed her to be as creative as she wanted to be. So she was coloring her hair. She was cutting her hair. She was doing all the things. And I just thought that it was so fascinating that she could do it. Like she could just stand in the mirror and do all of these things. And I wanted her to have that freedom because I didn't have that freedom.
Yeah,
Right. So it's important.
yeah, and that's what I mean by where they are is totally different. And you're right with the conditioning. Like I was talking to I had posted us going to the Beyonce concert, and you probably saw my 11-year-old with the full face makeup and the hair and stuff. That's not, and I know typically we would look at that, and people may have like, why does that little girl have? But that is all her in her creativity. She has a whole makeup bar upstairs because she's so creative. And we're talking about stories. Sometimes they are speaking through whatever. And I know for me, right, being a more reserved person, I typically speak through my clothing, right? And so sometimes we don't know what our children may be speaking through with their creativity. And because we have something in our past, or just this belief that that's too much, right? Red means Jezebel, or don't, right? Like these old things that came from what we have no idea. No, don't shave your hair, but it's going to grow back. It grows back, right? Like, and once we get past, or once we dig deeper than the root, like Chrissy was saying, we may then realize where that comes from and then can dispel it so that we can be free. And I can imagine the little girls who are now women who sit in your chair. And I think that's really what's happening, is that little girl is now coming and she's able to be free. I hear you talk to your clients all the time, and it takes time, not just to style their hair, but because you're talking to them through the journey. And sometimes it's like you're asking questions. I know for me, I don't know what I want. You tell me, just do it. I'm not sure, because sometimes we just don't know. And I could imagine it comes from that little girl who knows what she was trying to say and never got a chance to say it, and now allow someone else to choose. So
Yes. No, it's so true. I don't want to, so I don't do young children anymore. I started at 13, and I used to get moms all the time when I would do young kids, and they may have seen some other child that I've done, or may have even seen my daughter with her haircut, and by default their daughter, right, is like, well, I want my hair like that, right? And then so now I'm standing there like the bad guy, like, well, what do I say? What do I do? Right. But my first question to the parent or the aunt or the sister or whoever brought them in is, what's the worst that could happen if you let them cut their hair? Right. And if you're raising up a child in such a way, it's really just a form of expression. It doesn't have anything to do with, right? Because I know for me, some of the stories that I heard was they're going to be too fresh, right? Like right. Just all the things. And they're only going to be fresh if you allow them to be, truthfully, right? And if we're just talking about a hairstyle, like, I mean, as adults, I just feel like when we have a hairstyle that we love, it exudes self-confidence, right? And so why would you not want your daughter or your child or whoever this young person is, why would you not want them to exude great self-esteem? Why would you not want them to exude confidence, right? And if we start them young, who's to know who they turn into, because they were allowed to express themselves in such a way that allowed them to really tap into who they feel like what looks good to them.
and sometimes we can't even learn what we like or don't like until we get to try it. And so we got to be able to try. So I so appreciate you talking with us. I definitely want to, I'll say this first, and then I'll pass it back to you to find out what's next and where people can find you and what can people expect to see from you. But just charging our friends, our impact friends, with think about your relationship with your hair, and where does your story lead you back to, and is it resonating with you now? And it might, just like Damaris was saying, it might allow you to have conversations with your child, children, mother, parent, grandparent, or whoever, to kind of make these connections so that we can unravel the truth about what really happened along the way. I know I'm going to talk to my girls as well. And it's what my husband too says to me, like he tells me all the time, what his preferences and stuff. Even that, I was shocked. He like loves natural hair. And for some reason, my thought was like, men love all the makeup, the long hair, this. And he's like, no, not at all. So again, let's detach ourselves from what we think is the truth and really tap into and have conversations, because that's where the truth is able to come out, is when we have these conversations. So if you can, Kristen, let us know, where can people find you? Where are you located? What's next? And what can we expect to see from Curly Girls Mentor?
So I am so cozily nestled in University City on 38th and Lancaster. I am on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I don't really know how to use it. Don't tell anyone. Of course, I'm on Facebook, right? And I use Curly Girls Mentor for everything. That way, you guys can find me easily. And you guys can look forward to some really big things. I am going to unpack more of deeper than the root for you guys to be able to tap into that, right? It's going to look like reaching out to you guys, the community, to really find out what your trauma looks like, what your story looks like, to really unfold really what self-esteem looks like for us as Black and brown people, right? Like, we need to really get to what that root is, really. I'm also rebranding, right? I have my launch party coming up on the 23rd of September. So I'm really excited about that. But I really am here for the community, right? Like, this is way bigger than me. And my main focus, my goal is to really get everyone, whether they are young, old, in between, whoever, right? I want to get us back to a place where we are really loving on self, right? So that we can then love on others properly.
Yay, I love it. And you see Miss Stacy's on here showing her proud mama love. Last thing I would say before I forget, something Chrissy said that I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. We were talking about this idea of natural hair and natural hairstylists and stuff. And when you think about natural hair, right, you think of like incense and all that. One thing I can tell you is that that is so not, like, I love Chrissy for exposing that, is that you can be jazzy, you could be like fashionable, you could be fierce, you could be colorful and still have natural hair. And so you don't have to be kind of like this like baby on the backpack with the natural look. Like that's again, maybe another stereotype, is that to have natural hair you have to be in this box. But you can be all kinds of shades, all kinds of sizes, colors, and all of that, and still be a natural hair girl, loving on your curls, whatever they may look like. So thank you for sharing that and offering that freedom, because that's yet another thing that was like, that is so true. That's true.
Listen, I this inspired me to wear my curls. I'm gonna stop, really, honestly, because I have curly hair, right? I choose to straighten my hair, and I'm thinking to myself, why do I do that? I'm gonna check myself. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do that. Thank you so much, Kristen.
I love this. My heart is warm. My heart is warm.
Same. This is exactly the point in what I do.
Yeah,
To get you to raise the question within yourself. So yes, that makes me excited.
and then I'm gonna come to you and say, well, what am I supposed to use? Because I have a hot mess now. Like, now we're gonna fix it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed. Take a moment, ask yourself some questions, connect yourself, curl on your hair, like twirl on your hair, like love it, feel it. Yes, because we're just proud of ourselves. We're so beautiful in all of our different ways. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us, Kristen. It was such an amazing opportunity to have you on here with us. And thank you guys for joining. And until next time, the Impact Podcast, we'll see you soon.